everybody, how are you doing? I'm excited to be back. We are talking this week about if it is a good idea to negotiate as a group. I'm Casey D'Amato. I am president of Certified PA Consulting. I've been a PA since '03, started Certified PA Consulting in '09 because I managed a multi-million-dollar medical practice as well as started my own business and understand the dynamics between how to create a win-win structure for both the owners of a facility or managers as well as the providers. So I've been the leading expert in helping kind of mediate and helping coach PAs and NNPs to some extent through this process, kind of understand the fundamentals of business and what makes sense for you and for the facility, and when you can collaborate to make win-wins and when it's time to make an exit. So today we're talking about, and I have my notes here, so that's why I'm looking down, when it's a good time to negotiate as a group. This topic comes up a lot and it's a really great topic. I think it's a really interesting one. Now there are some nuances because there's so many different types of businesses within the medical industry in the United States. We've got very, very small private practice that is maybe just a single provider owned to, very large entities, hospital systems, things like that, with a board of directors and nonprofits, academics, and everything in between. So there really isn't a one size fits all to answer this question. So I'm going to speak a little bit in generalities when it comes to negotiation strategy in general. So in general, it's better to negotiate on a personal level as opposed to a group level. And that's so that you can customize what works for you and your role within what works for the facility. And this can be different from person to person. And so negotiating as a group kind of makes these sort of like unionized rules, if you will, and it works very well in very, very large organizations in the non-medical world. So it works very well like in teachers unions. My husband's in a union, Directors Guild. There's law enforcement unions, right? And it can work well when you have thousands and thousands of people. Then it can make sense. There's a lot of benefits to negotiate health insurance, and there's in pensions and things like that. There's sort of like power in numbers. But when it comes to very small details in negotiating, so this is talking about like schedule, this is talking about, staff support, this is talking about, to some extent salary as well. You can actually customize things a lot more when you negotiate one-on-one. So the first point I want to make is it a good idea to negotiate as a group? Usually not, unless you are in a facility where there is a lot of people. And then there's a lot of benefits in that, not just kind of in the power of the negotiation, but also like other benefits in negotiating as a group. So typically in medicine, most of the time, not always, again, there are some very large hospital systems where it can make sense to negotiate as a group. But in most smaller private practices or smaller multi-specialties and things like that, it makes sense to negotiate just personally one-on-one. And this allows you to be able to really customize what the practice needs, what your needs are, and kind of align them in a really customized way. And so negotiating personally in a smaller type of setting, and by smaller, I mean like less than 100 people, providers, is usually best to negotiate kind of one-on-one so that you can really customize exactly what the practice needs. Maybe the practice is looking to expand and you can help in some way. Maybe they're looking to improve efficiency and you can help that with EMR templates or overseeing research or whatever it might be, and in turn negotiate a raise, right? And these are kind of very specific things. Maybe you can do some staff management, or there's all sorts of different things that you can do that you can bring extra value to the situation and in turn negotiate for an additional salary or increase in salary, or negotiate for flexible time and things like that. That if you are negotiating as a big group, this may not apply to everybody else because nobody else might have the same interest that you have to help the facility in this way. So it's very customized. So group negotiating, the other thing about group negotiating to remember is this can put the other party on the defensive. So if a large, and again, in large hospital systems, that's different because everybody's used to negotiating in big groups, but in smaller facilities, it puts the other party on the defensive. If let's say 5 or 6 or 10 PAs join forces together and then go and negotiate as a group, that puts the employer or the office manager on the defensive. They feel kind of like ganged up on, if you will. So it's not always the best strategy to put the other party on the defensive. They're going to kind of dig their heels in and resist more than if you sit down and have a conversation and be like, hey, I really want to be here for a long time. I really see you're doing amazing managing and growing this practice. How can I help you achieve your goals? I'm hoping to be able to either, gain a little bit more bonus incentive or have a little bit more flexible time, but I want to help you as well. How can we sit down and talk through how we can help each other? That conversation goes a long way in smaller practices. So keep that in mind. The other thing to remember with group negotiating in kind of these like large kind of union models, and you see this even in non-medicine, is that oftentimes there's sort of like smaller wins. So you can kind of negotiate like set salaries based on set hours, that everybody who works this many hours over this much period of time, like after 5 years gets a certain incremental raise, or over 10 years gets an incremental raise, and things like that. But these are relatively small compared to what you could negotiate on your own. And I know lots of people in lots of unions very close to me that negotiate even outside and above union rate because they bring more value. So if you negotiate kind of as a group, sort of that like kind of union mentality, remember, though they're going to be sort of smaller incremental type of wins, if you will. And if you negotiate on your own, you're going to be able to accomplish much bigger wins. Again, the exception to that would be if you're in a very large kind of hospital setting or multi-state hospital or something like that, where you have lots and lots of providers, then yes, it can definitely make sense to negotiate as a group, because they're not going to have the time or the bandwidth to negotiate with everybody one-on-one unless you're really looking to get into administration or do something different. But if you're working in private practice or multi-specialty or something that's smaller, where you're dealing with less than 100 total providers, less than, let's say, 20 PAs, then it can make sense. It usually does make sense to negotiate one-on-one, so you can really customize. You can really customize your hours, your schedule. Maybe you want to pick up evening hours or Saturdays, and you want to drop a weekday so that you have more availability to the exam rooms or something like that. That's very specific to your type of facility. And oftentimes these things can be negotiated best one-on-one in smaller type of settings. So it's kind of a complicated answer. I know we're kind of going all around when talking about, is it a good idea to negotiate as a group? In my opinion, the general rule of thumb is if you're in a very large setting or dealing with a large group of people, it can make sense for sure, 100%. But if you're dealing with smaller entities, more small business type of mindset, then it usually makes more sense to negotiate one-on-one. You can really customize what helps the facility, what helps you, how do you create a win-win, bridge that gap. And if you can't create a win-win, right, then there's always that opportunity to plan your exit. So make sure you're taking advantage of all of our resources at certifiedpaconsulting.com. We have tons of free videos on how to plan your exit, how to deal with complicated personalities, bosses, things like that, how to negotiate, how to negotiate if you're a new grad. Again, we've been doing this since 2009. We've been doing this the longest. We have by far the most business experience. We have owned multiple businesses. We've even sold business. We've raised capital. We really are experts when it comes to negotiating. So take advantage of our resources. We put them out every single week, a free video. And of course, we have our deeper dive Master the Boss Mindset Masterclass for those who really want to learn expert negotiating skills. Take advantage of that course. It qualifies for Category 2 CME. And we're available for private coaching as well, life coaching, career coaching. If you're thinking about accelerating your career or making a career change, we are here for you. All right, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we will see you next week. Take care.